Reverend Jean Celia.
Well, good morning again. I see it says the host has highlighted my picture. So, hi. You know, one of the very best things about being here in Princeton is that it is right now 1:49 in the afternoon. I do not have to get up at dark 30 to be there with you. And what a treat is that? Anyway, last month, we focused on the feminine essence that is part of each of us: soft, light, compassionate, tender, caring, right? Traits that we typically consider feminine: nurturing, giving, receptive. An integral, inseparable fiber in the elegant tapestry of creation is the feminine in each of us. So let's take a look at another thread in the masterpiece of life. An essential part of each of us is our masculine energy. What are some of the traditionally considered masculine traits? Oh, logic, left brain, independent, self-sufficient, physically strong, assertive, competitive, the cultural characteristics usually identified as masculine, kind of career driven and focused and generally driven. Next week is Father's Day. And so thank you, Mike, for that beautiful song. I love that, the way you sing it, and how appropriate it is this month, especially because next Sunday, we celebrate every father, every stepfather, every foster father. And what I'm going to say is, let's take a look at that in an even broader way. And let's celebrate the masculine essence in each of us, in everyone. There are those, and maybe one or two or 10, whose behavior is kind of macho, which can cross the line into bullying and controlling. There are many, both male and female, who embody more male characteristics than female behavior. At times, I'm going to confess, we each turn to one or the other because they are both such a part of us. And in this dualistic world, masculine, I know this will be a surprise, masculine is sometimes considered superior because it's tough and, not so girly and emotional. Now, I am old enough to know and remember that these characteristics used to be taken for granted. It was just the way it was. And as I was writing my notes yesterday, I was reminded of one of my, several things, but I'll mention one of my coworkers. And he is a bit, how can I say this? Full of himself, superior. And that leads to a lot of behavior that some of us might consider bullying or not very nice. And so there was one day that he went out to a different office and he was talking to the employees there, who were also all of our peers. And he was saying how awful things are in our office, which is where he had his office at that time. And especially this one person, and he just went on and on, I guess, about this one person. Well, it got back to her, and she just cried. She just sat down and cried and sobbed, and, how can he think that way about me and all this stuff? And so when he got back from the other office, I went into his office and I closed the door and I said, I understand that you've been talking smack about some people in this office. I don't really care because I consider the source and I know it's just a bunch of hot air. Talk about me however you want. It doesn't matter. Those people know me. They know my sense of integrity and fairness and my joy. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. But that your words caused so-and-so to cry and sob and be so distraught, I said, is unacceptable. And so what did he say to me? She just needs to man up. I said, really? Well, let me tell you, this is bullying. This is pathetic. This is only because I mean, I just went on and on and on and on. And I finally got up and left and closed the door again. Wasn't 5 minutes later that my boss called me in and he said, so I hear you had a conversation with so-and-so, this other guy. And I said, well, yes, I did. And he said, well, I don't know what you said, but he is so upset. He was almost in tears. Oh my. And he left for the day. I said, really? He just needs to man up. And my boss kind of looked at me and said, what do you mean? And I told him the story. And I said, I really don't care what he says about me because people know he's kind of a blowhard. But to say that about somebody else, no. I said, I needed to talk to him at his level face to face. And if he can't handle that, that's not my problem. I'm here to tell you, most of my life when I was quite younger, I would never have had the courage to do anything like that. I've worked in male-dominated fields most of my life. And I thought to get ahead, I kind of had to mimic them. Oh my gosh, I was so young and silly. How free it is now to be old and free to be me. And I just, I don't let people get away with that stuff anymore. Talk to people at the level they are at, and they'll man up or not. So anyway, so my boss just kind of said, well, maybe tone it down next time. And I said, I tone it down when he tones it down. And that was it. Um, life is so much freer now because so many of us have decided it's okay to use our voice. There is more to life than choosing one or the other, this thing or that thing, this behavior or that behavior. In this case, choosing bullying and trying to control others, or being subservient with little self-confidence. Here's a typical male story that I came across. There was a famous football coach. Now, my nephew's a football coach, and they're not all like this, but I'm sure some of them are. And he knew he was hot stuff, man. He was quite full of himself. I can relate to that. You probably can too. He was on vacation with his family in rural Oregon, just the outskirts, the lower 40, way out there. And when he and his family walked into a movie theater in the small town, oh my gosh, everyone applauded. And of course, he smiled and waved, and he took it for granted. He just knew, of course, that the people recognized him, even in the boonies in Oregon. And then a man came over to him and shook his hand and said, thank you so much for coming. They won't start the movie unless we have at least 10 or more paying people. Sometimes we are not aware of the things we are appreciated for. Right? How macho was that? It's all about me. Masculine is the balance to the feminine side of us. Hunter-gatherer, yin-yang, logic, compassion. However, to live fully in this dualistic world where there is good and bad, yes and no, black and white, to live fully in this world is to integrate these two parts, to know that they are flip sides of the same coin, and that neither one is who we are in unitive consciousness. I'm not talking about physical gender. This is beyond the physical. In unity, we learn there is only one love, one life, one light, and that lives in, through, and as each of us. Not as masculine and feminine, but as love. Unitive consciousness is acknowledging and accepting all the parts of us that aren't really separate parts. They only seem separate when we see through the eyes of duality, of separation, of discord or chaos or fear. We can't really be just macho or just subservient. We are both and we are neither. Because beyond that, there's love. Of course, here we are at Ocean Unity, where we teach and we demonstrate that there is one God, one life. And that is harmony, that is love, that is light that knows no opposite. So when we revert to believing that we're either masculine or feminine, what are we saying? We're saying that there are two sections to God, that God is separate, that love is different for different people, which is impossible, right? God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. God is I am. So what does the co-founder of Unity say about integration? I happen to have that right here. He says, this is Charles Fillmore, integration is when all the desire of the mind and heart is to express God. Our only desire is to express God. Man is made whole, unified, integrated. And from Matthew, blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Man is spiritually integrated when he experiences unity of mind and body through Christ consciousness. Integration. Not two, not separate. What does the Course in Miracles tell us? Everything is either an expression of love or a call for love. Because there is only love beyond the illusion of separation. We see through duality with two human eyes. We can choose to see through unity, seeing through the eyes of Christ, the single eye of love. In Japan last month, Mike and I visited a huge statue of the Buddha. I don't know, maybe 48 feet tall. I don't know. I can't see you, Mike, to see if you're nodding yes, but it was huge. In fact, when I stood in front of it, and I'm almost 5 feet tall, I did not even come up to the top of the base where the Buddha was seated. Huge. And in the middle of his forehead was a large, very large, round jewel right there. It is believed that this is the place on the Buddha and on each of us that emits light. You know, as I was thinking that, in fact, as I was in front of the Buddha last month, that huge statue, I thought of a movie that I have seen so long ago, 30 years, 40 years, I don't know, a very long time, maybe more. It was called Cocoon. I may rewatch it one of these days. What I remember of that movie, the only thing I remember is there were a lot of older people in it, maybe in a care facility or some kind of club. I don't remember that. But when one of them died, of course, it was sad and everyone was crying. Me too. And yet when they died, their skin dissolved. And what was beneath it was only light. It was light that then was dispelled, dissipated into the light that is everywhere. Beings of light. Beings of light contained by skin. That's what we are. Oh my gosh. The Christ light that we are is the light that is shared through the third eye, the Buddha eye, the eye of Christ. And of course, the third eye chakra is associated with what? Intuition, self-awareness, beyond human capabilities. In Hinduism, Mike and I saw that jewel of light in the Shinto shrines on Shiva, in the space between and just above the eyebrows. Unity, one, beyond all notion or possibility of separation, beyond human understanding, one love, one light, not masculine and feminine when we come from unity. Here's a quote by Christine Waltner's Painter, who said, "The Psalms see all of creation as offering continual praise to God. The sea, the sky, the trees, the animals, the stars, all these are seen singing God's glory without human words, but with another kind of language. Without human words, with the same kind of language that Mike shared with us this morning. Singing praise, not even needing human words, because, you know, what I know is that words so often get us into trouble. Oh my gosh, into conflict. Okay, I should say the interpretation of words. Confession. Mike and I often talk kind of past each other, same words, different pathways. And then one of us laughs and says, oh yeah, Mars and Venus. Remember that book? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Yeah, just don't always communicate in the same way. But what does that psalm say? Singing God's glory without human words, but with another kind of language. Because words so often lead us to confusion, different understandings, and even more dramatic outcomes. Listen to this. There was an old blacksmith and he was getting ready to take on an apprentice because, you know, he just didn't want to work so hard, maybe retire in the not too distant future. And so he hired a strong young man because, of course, strength, physical strength is the male characteristic. You know, this was not a cushy job because the old man was really crabby and exacting. And he said to the boy, don't ask me a lot of questions. Just do whatever I tell you to do. Okay, you're the boss. So one day the old blacksmith took an iron out of the forge and laid it on the anvil. Get that hammer over there, boy. The boy got the hammer. And the old blacksmith said, now when I nod my head, hit it real good and hard. Now the town is looking for a new blacksmith. Get us in trouble. When I nod my head, hit it real good and hard. It is so easy, so human to get caught up in words, in drama, in somebody else's story. Goodness knows I have enough stuff in my own story, but still, to get caught up in fear and in doubt. And so many people, both male and female, turn to being macho or intimidating to deal with an unconscious hidden fear. And once we begin to realize that and understand that, I don't know what the fear is. What I know is that it's there and that there is some place that they are so vulnerable that they're hiding. And then I can feel that compassion, the compassion of Christ, the compassion of Mother Mary, the compassion of love. Sometimes we move into helplessness. Well, I'm just a girl. I'm just an old lady. I did that on the plane coming here, actually. Well, sort of. There was a young, tall guy behind me, and I had my suitcase there that goes up overhead. Well, that's a little high for some of us. And so I went to pick it up and I looked up and I said, could you give me a hand, please? Oh, sure. And he just kind of picked it up and put it up there like it was nothing. And it was like, oh, okay. See, that works. We don't have to move into helplessness to deal with a lack of self-confidence or a lack of self-loving. We all cover what we don't want others to see or to judge or to take advantage of, and what we don't want to see ourselves. We cover it up, pretend it's not there, and then we have this behavior that others see as unacceptable. You know, there's a different way to respond, to live, to be, not masculine or feminine, but both. Knowing we are light, confident that God is all, in all, as all, and all is well now. Don't we say that every week? Yes. To breathe from love rather than from fear or doubt. We can close our eyes and breathe and just focus on our breath. Totally. And remember that God is all there is, love is all, and all is good with a capital G. No matter the circumstances, all is well with my soul. So balancing and intertwining what seems to be different parts of us is really the pathway to peace and contentment, living beyond the idea of masculine and feminine, beyond all possibility of separation in the one light that lives and moves and breathes and has its very essence in us as pure joy. May your world be joy-filled as we move into our time of silence after a chant by Mike.
All right.
We're not done yet.
Okay.